Hello, hello, beautiful brave hearts. How is everyone doing? I am so excited for you to be here today. We are continuing on with what we are calling the Ultimate Comeback series with some really badass, amazing women. We're talking about radical transformations after heartbreak and proof that your best chapter is the one that you write next. As a reminder, we're here on this Ultimate Comeback series to really talk about how heartbreak marks the end of a chapter, but it doesn't get to dictate the rest of your story. In this special, bonus series that we're doing, I'm highlighting and sitting down with seven badass women who didn't just survive their breakups or the divorce, but they also used them as fuel for an epic second act or an epic comeback. We're going to be talking about a lot of the behind the scenes of their ultimate comebacks to showcase and show you how they built, not just built, but rebuilt or reinvented and rose higher than they ever were before. And my hope here is that you really get a kind of like a behind the scenes of the messy and real and triumphant like examples of what's available to you. Um, and know that you're just not alone and you will absolutely come back from this in a way of that's bigger. Well, my ultimate message that's bigger and better than the one that you had with your ex. So, Gabrielle Stone, she's amazing. You guys probably know her because you've already listened to her episode that we've done on the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast before when she released one of her new books. I wanted to invite her back on because I had recently seen what she had been sharing on social media, and I was dying laughing almost every single time I watched one of her reels. And there was always just this really clever hook where I'm like jaw on the floor kind of experience of like, what? I thought I knew you really well. And then when I see that, I'm like, oh, snap, I didn't know this portion of you. And she just finds a way to keep things real and so authentic. I'm just always so in awe of you, Gabrielle. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day today to have this conversation. I wanted to go ahead and give you a moment to introduce yourself.
Oh my God. Well, that was such a lovely intro. I'm honored to be thought of that way by you. I'm honored to be included in such a wonderful comeback related thing that you're doing because that's so in my wheelhouse of like I feel like my whole life has just been one comeback after another of like how we can reinvent ourselves, and now it's a whole nother one, as you know, with motherhood. So thank you. I am honored to be here. As you said, my name is Gabrielle Stone. And most people probably know me either from TikTok or Instagram that led them to reading one of my many books that are now available. But the first, which was the kind of precipice of my comeback era, is called Eat, Pray, FML. But I'm sure we're going to get into the whole story of what led to that book taking place.
Yes, I love it. Let's dive in. So, I actually wanted to start because I do feel like you've been through a lot of different flavors of comebacks. Like when I thought about bringing you on, I'm like, I wonder what comeback you're going to want to talk about. There's the obvious one. I feel like you and I both have our obvious comeback, but I am kind of curious, can you give me like three of your top kind of life experiences that feel like comebacks that were very monumental and like life-changing to you?
Totally. So I think the first one would have to be when I lost my father. I was almost 7 years old. I walked in and found him dead on the floor from a heart attack, which is obviously wildly traumatic for a 7-year-old. And it, more so than being a comeback, it really was the first instance in my life where my little brain created a subconscious belief that would show up later on in my life. And that was when I love someone, they die, which sounds very dramatic, but as a 7-year-old, when you experience something like that, you're like, my daddy, who was the center of my world, when he loved me as much as he did, and then he died. So it became this subconscious fear of abandonment that would begin to play out, kind of sprinkled throughout my life. I would say the next kind of comeback that I had to overcome, they're all, until we get into the divorce stuff, grief based, which I think is super important to acknowledge as a comeback because grief can feel very insurmountable at times. And it's such a process to move through it. There's no quick fix to it. It shows up days later, weeks later, years later. And it's something that is super important to understand that that is something massive you got through and came back from. My second dealing with that kind of like reinforced that subconscious belief that I had was when I lost my high school sweetheart in a car accident when I was 18. And it was again, when I love someone, they die. And to an adult brain, that becomes when I love someone, they leave. So subconsciously, I started attracting things that would play out that scenario that I subconsciously believed. So my brain could go, see, we knew that was coming. So we were right. We're safe. And what that looks like as an adult is people cheating on you, people leaving unexpectedly and breaking up with you, the the continuous abandonment would play out in my life. And it wasn't until I started doing a lot of my work and my healing work where I could shift and be like, "Oh, I'm attracting this." And until I look at this belief that has been with me since I was a 7-year-old little girl, I'm not going to be able to attract anything different.
Girl, I feel like no wonder you've written how many books do you have at this point? At
I
least
have
two
I
or
have
three?
3 now. Yeah,
Yeah,
3.
yeah. I'm like, no wonder you have so many books. I feel like you're a living, breathing book, which we all are, but like
What a
you're
compliment. Thank you.
wow, crazy. Thank you so much for sharing those. Again, and more things that I just continuously learn about you that just put me in awe of you.
Oh.
Um, okay, the other thing that I think would be really important to discuss is how would you define an ultimate comeback? Like, how would you define that?
I mean, I think the reason why people find my content and then read Eat, Pray, FML is really because that book is a perfect example of an ultimate comeback. So, I was married for almost 2 years. I found out my husband was having an affair with a 19-year-old for 6 months. I filed for divorce, left. And shortly after that, I met a man, as we do, who was like a kind of well-known Hollywood actor, and we fell like madly in love with each other. 0 to 100, meet my family, gonna have babies. Like this is obviously why I needed to get divorced. And he invited me on a month-long trip to Italy. And I was like, duh, yes, I'm going. 48 hours before we were getting on the plane, he told me he needed to go by himself and broke up with me. And I was devastated. Like, this man broke my heart like my ex husband never could have done. And I was sitting in my mom's house on my childhood bed because that's where you move when you're 28 and get divorced with a bottle of wine, crying tears, bags already packed. And I was like, okay, well, I can either stay at home heartbroken or I can go travel Europe for a month by myself. So I took my backpack and I did 6 countries over the span of the month. And I wrote my book, Eat, Pray, FML. And I think why people have resonated so much with it over the years that it's now been published is that it was really like my lowest point of like the rug being pulled out from under me with the cheating and the divorce. And like we had only been married for a little over a year and we had this big wedding. And um, the shame that I felt with my friends and family finding out and like moving through all of that to only then be hit with the actual heartbreak and be like, oh, no, 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 you thought that was rock bottom. We're actually going to take you 2 levels below here after you flaunt this new amazing relationship that you think is going to be like the end all be all and change your entire life. Psych, you're actually going to be fucking heartbroken and get on a plane. Bye. Have fun. Go learn how to heal your bullshit about not wanting to be alone. And over the course of that trip, and that book, and then subsequently its sequel book, the Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl, I made this entire human shift within myself and came back from that trip a different person in all of the best ways and really took control of my life, had an entire career shift, had an entire relationship shift, um, and really finally got to know myself and was able to then authentically show up in that way. And it was the biggest comeback I've ever experienced was going from 2 heartbreaks back to back to being a best-selling author about the things that broke me.
so delicious though. Literally my favorite. Literally my favorite. The vibe of that, oh, I'm obsessed. I do
Thank
really
you.
resonate. I had a question about like was there ever a kind of a spot in your comeback where things were like seemingly getting worse, not better? And I feel like
Yeah.
that's a great example of that where it's
I
like
well, I mean, yeah, besides the, the second relationship failing. Yeah, every time I went back to said second failed relationship for quote closure sex and like continuing to need to relearn that lesson. Like I remember when I was editing the sequel book, which like spoiler alert, you meet my husband in that book and I end up wildly happy and my third book is co-written by said husband. But I remember when I was editing the sequel, every time my ex would kind of come back around, I was like, "Oh my God, like I want to jump into the pages of this book and slap me across the face." Like I can't imagine what other people are. But you know what? I get so many DMs to this day about people resonating with that piece of not being able to let go of like the physical connection with someone because it's the only time you feel like valued by them, which is so sick and fucked up. Um, but it's yeah, every time that would happen, it was like, are we making a comeback or are we backtracking? What are we doing here?
such a real thing. So real though. I mean, there's so many of us who have felt that and feel it. I totally get that. I resonate.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. I'm curious about, do you feel like there are phases or steps or I'm a next steps girly, so I'm kind of addicted to the how-tos still. I know that that's kind of outdated and expired at this point, but I'm like, I still love a good how-to. Like, do you feel after having gone through multiple like comebacks in life that you can see patterns of what happens to get to your comeback, like the before and then the after? Like, how do you
Mm.
get from the before to the after? And do you know what stage you're in when you're in it?
That's such a good question. I do think that there are patterns for me specifically before everything starts to shift, everything falls apart. So if you're like looking around and you're like, cool, I'm being broken up with, or I'm being cheated on, or I just lost my job, or like somebody up and died on me, how rude, like whatever it is, like when everything's falling apart around you, that's usually when a big life moment is coming. My journey is a perfect example of that. Like, found out I was getting cheated on, got divorced, fell in love, got love bombed, got heartbroken, went on a plane to Europe, which literally changed my entire life. I was working as an actress and director prior to this. I had zero inkling of like I should be a writer. I like knew how to bullshit the hell out of an English essay, but like that was the extent of my writing career. And it literally changed the path and trajectory of my life. So, and there was no way that I would be able to like have that in my brain of like, oh, this is why this is all happening. I've always been a big believer in it all happens for a reason, and I still very much am. But a lot of times when you're in the thick of it, you can't see what that is. And I feel kind of similar now, if I'm being very honest. I feel like I had my son almost 3 years ago now, and I've been in this like kind of wave of postpartum motherhood and like your whole life changes and now you're like, okay, like what am I doing? What's next? And I've been feeling like I'm in this waiting room and I'm like, okay, door number 1 is this project I'm working on. Door number 2 is this project I'm working on. Door number 3 is this project I'm working on. But there's door number 4 over there and it's blank. And I know I'm supposed to go through that door, but what the fuck is behind that door? And that's also how I felt before I went on this big Europe trip and my entire life changed, which is mildly terrifying because that was such a huge shift in my life. But it's also exciting because it like is this next chapter you get to experience and you just have to kind of surrender and be like, okay, show me what's next. Show me where I'm supposed to go, which is wildly hard for us type A. We like to make lists, how to girlies, which I am.
Yes. Girl, it's so hard. I'm very much in the same, like the similar position where I'm like, I, I, I don't, I know that a part of who I am and what I'm doing isn't working, and I can see that. and I'm good with like I feel complete, all of the things. But when it comes to the new part, I'm like, I legitimately have no fucking clue what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And then it leaves me kind of like blank with next steps and like again, the how to, like what comes next then. So like I guess I'm selfishly curious, but I also understand that I felt this in heartbreak too when I wasn't even sure like what my bigger and better life looked like
Mm-hmm.
or what direction to even take. What is I have multiple questions here, so this is multifaceted. So sorry,
Okay.
but I want to know what is because I believe that thoughts create feelings, feelings feel action, right? What is like the thought feeling combination that you feel helps you move forward when you're uncertain about the unknown in the future? And
Mm-hmm.
then what are the actions you tend to take from that thought feeling combination? Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's a great question. This entire year and last year, if we're being honest, for
Yeah.
me has been about letting go of control
Mm,
because I have been so not controlling, that's the wrong word. I feel safe with control because when I'm not in control, dad dies. When I'm not in control, I get cheated on. When I'm not in control, X, Y, and Z happen. So whenever I'm in control, things feel safer. And you can't be in the flow of creation when you're holding the tight grip in trying to control things. So for me, it's been about letting go of that control and being okay with the potential of the unknown. Because if you look back at my first comeback of, what Eat Pray FML is about, there is no way. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get on this plane and then all of this shit's gonna happen and then we're gonna end up with a different career." Although I have to say that I bought a leather-bound journal the day before that trip started and I was like, "I'm going to write a book about this experience." And I did kind of like I knew where it was gonna go, but like the magnitude of it, if you told me I was gonna like blow up on TikTok like some random kids dancing app in the middle of COVID when we were gonna have a world pandemic, like what? You just don't ever know what's on the other side. And even if you're working on like manifesting something specific, you never can be attached to how it's gonna show up. You have to be like, okay, this is the thing I want, bring it to me in the biggest and best way possible. Um, like for example, I was so locked in when I first published Eat Pray FML. I was like, a celebrity is going to find this book and they're going to post about it and then it's just going to take off like wildfire. Never in a million years would you have convinced me that I was going to get on another social media app in a pandemic and it was going to go viral and we reach women like globally. So you just have to allow yourself to be okay and comfortable with the unknown. And like sometimes for me at least, I have to remember to shift my perspective and be appreciative about the mundane aspects of life. Like, how blessed am I to come home to a safe house that has food and like warmth and a family that I get to do laundry for and spend time with? Like, how fucking lucky am I when the work part of my brain wants to be like, okay, but I want to go do this and I want this project to go and I want this. Like, so it's been a lot of like shifting back to gratitude and releasing the timeline around the control. I don't even know if that answered anything you asked me.
No, no, no. No, it's super helpful because I mean, you really helped with like, I feel like the smaller actions that we can take moving to like when there is a known is what you're talking about with the gratitude and being like so grateful that we have clean drinking water and romantic, like what I heard, and you didn't say these exact words, but like romanticizing your day to day as it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
which I think in turn plays to the first thing you were talking about of releasing the how, like releasing and letting go of the attachment around how it happens,
Hmm.
which I think is super helpful because I work with people on helping them to get over their ex by reducing desire and attachment specifically. And a huge component of that is sometimes when we're coming from heartbreak or a breakup, when people hear that, they're worried I'm talking about saying like you need to release desire for the thing that you actually want, which may be like a family and a husband and a stable, healthy, beautiful
Right.
relationship. And that's not it at all. We can have a big desire, like a strong desire for that, but we do have to release the attachment to the how, which right now is the X, right?
Yeah,
We think that is the way where we're going to get there, which isn't necessarily true. So that's just helpful for me when I'm thinking about it for my own self of just like, oh, I can just release, I can keep the overall vision of what I'm working towards and I can just release the way in which I thought it was going to play out.
totally. And I think especially when you're talking about an ex specifically, like for me, that second heartbreak that I went through, I mean, it was the only heartbreak because I wasn't really heartbroken about my ex-husband. But when I was trying to get over that, it was quite literally like detoxing from a drug.
Yeah.
And if you are still scouring their Instagram and like leaving crumbs and like letting doors be open, like you're not detoxing and you're
Mm,
not giving yourself a fair chance to get over this individual quicker.
yeah.
And I think that's why in the second book that I wrote, which is the sequel, where that ex, kind of resurfaces and won't fully leave, um, is because I was allowing that, and sometimes you have to finish whatever karmic chapter is happening. But whenever people are like, really struggling, I can't get over this person, I'm like, well, have you really gone no contact and allowed yourself to detox from that? Because it's such an important step.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about I work with a lot of people who can't actually go no contact sometimes.
Right,
Um,
because like kids and shit.
yeah, but and so I think it's important just to note too, just on the side, that it's not necessarily required because you can still reduce attachment and desire without with still having contact. So it's like you said, I think it is important when you have that opportunity to understand what thoughts and feelings come up when you do go no contact and then addressing them.
Yeah,
But yeah, don't use that as a reason to limit yourself either, because you can absolutely still get over that person, even if you have to have contact. But yeah.
100%. Yes.
I guess I am super curious. When it comes to your ultimate comebacks, what is there, and again, my next steps, how to girly, is there one? I'm all about like radical things. I love trying the things that seem kind of crazy and out there. So
Yeah.
tell me, like, what do you feel like might have been one to three of the most radical or unconventional or weird ways you've moved through like a comeback?
That's a great question. The first two answers are things that I write about in Eat Pray FML. The
Mhm.
first is the thought onion, which is my kind of way that I came up with on my trip of how to look deeper at the thoughts and reactions that I was having so that I could begin to A, get answers as to what the hell was going on, and B, be able to shift and heal those things. So you look at it like an onion. I always said I was going to change the name and then just continued writing on this trip and never actually did, and it stuck. So here we are. You look at it like an onion, and the first layer is called the superficial thought, and it's the knee jerk reaction you have when something happens, like before you can even think about why you're having this reaction. And it often comes from a superficial place that is emotional charged. And when you take a step back and you can look at what's underneath that, we call that the authentic thought. And that's usually where the pain point in where this superficial reaction came from. So where's the hurt that it's bringing up? And then when you take a step back and go deeper from there, that's the subconscious thought. And when you can get to that, that's where the real meat and potatoes are. It's like where there's usually a subconscious belief or a pattern that's been in your life for quite some time, a past trauma that's taken place. And when you can get to that, it's like, oh, this is what the core is. This is what I need to start shifting and healing. So I was really diligent about doing that on these comeback journeys that I was having. The second thing that was really helpful for me when I came back from my Europe trip, it was like everything just stopped. Like I got off the carousel of what a whirlwind these 3 months had been from like the time I got divorced to when I was coming back from this trip. It was such a high speed, condensed amount of time in my life. And I fell into like the deepest depression I had ever been in and didn't want to get out of bed, was like not okay. And one day I was like, okay, I don't even know what would make me happy at this point, but like, let's make a list of things that used to make me happy. And I wrote down those things. I think my original list was like dancing, meditating, going to the gym, eating well, writing. And I made this list out and I stuck it on my mirror and I was like, okay, Gabrielle, you have to do one of these things every single day and then you can get back in bed and like eat your ice cream and watch your Netflix. And I did that for about a week and a half. And then one day I was like, okay, let's do two. And then I would do two things a day. And then after another week, I was like, oh, I don't really feel like I need to get back in bed. Let's do three things, or let's do a couple things and then go do something else. And it was because I was loving myself. And when I realized that giving yourself love, sorry, let me say that again. When I realized that loving yourself is as simple as giving your soul the things it loves, it completely changed my life. Because I always thought self love was this weird shit where you look in the mirror and you're like, I love you, Gabrielle. You're so wonderful. And I was like, yeah, okay, I can do that, but it feels weird and cringy and inauthentic. And if you think of loving other people in your life, a parent, a child, a spouse, whatever, you do things and do acts of service that make them feel and experience love. So when we're talking about self-love, like why would you not do that with yourself? So that was something, how to action girlies, that I could like literally give myself a checklist and be like, okay, today we're going to love the shit out of yourself. That was very like instrumental in my comeback journey. My third recommendation would be to go travel. And that doesn't mean you have to hop on a plane and fly across the world and go do a month-long solo trip. You can take yourself to dinner and a movie. You can go for a weekend camping trip somewhere. Um, or you can go on an epic solo journey. I promise it will be the most life-changing thing you ever give yourself. Or you can come on one of my group trips that I now host. That's been one of the biggest joys of my life, is to welcome these women. And we have women from like late 20s to mid 60s, and everything in between. And I get to welcome these women who want to have solo travel experiences but are too like not ready to go do it by themselves necessarily, or just want these like adult friendships in their lives. And I welcome them one way and they leave in a completely different way, in the best way. And I've had women that have come and done multiple trips with me, and people are like, we saw you in this country, and now you're here and you're a completely different version of yourself. Um, Travel and community with women that have been through similar stuff as you is one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced. And it's been such an honor to be able to facilitate that to people who have read the books or listened to my podcast or followed me in any capacity. Um, and it really is one of the best medicines that there is like getting outside of your bubble and being able to have life experiences.
I'm so glad that that was your number three, because that was like my next question that I want to talk to you about, is talking about travel and its influence on a comeback. Because
Yes.
um, I think what I want to call out a little bit of that I love so much is that here on the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast, we talk a lot about thoughts, and we talk about life pain versus brain pain and the undue suffering that we have created in a breakup based off of what we're making the breakup mean about ourselves, about the future, about the past, and all of the things. And what I think is really cool is that for travel, um, it naturally opens you up to a new way of thinking and being by placing you in all brand new circumstances that maybe you've never been in before, that force you to access parts of your brain that you've never accessed before. So even
Hmm.
if I have to throw this out there because Gabrielle went, three steps ahead, which I love. Even if, let's say you had no knowledge that thoughts create feelings, even if you just went and traveled, you coming back with at least one new perspective about yourself or your life is probably pretty high. Like the probability of that is pretty high. You might continually like be thinking about your ex and all of the things, but you would at least probably come back with at least one new perspective. But what I think is really awesome, Gabrielle, and one of the reasons that I love you so much is that you don't just pair travel with travel. Like you just talked also about your onion. I almost called it a thought onion, but like
No,
I
that's what
love
it's
it.
called, the thought
That's what it's
onion.
called. Okay. So the thought onion, I think it's beautiful. And also this is why I love you because you're like I should change the name, but I don't. And I'm like this is I love you for that. That's like it's just like the way you thought about it in your brain and that's all it has to be and like that's good enough. And like I love that. I'm constantly inspired by that.
Thank you.
So when you pair travel with actually looking at your thoughts,
Hmm.
again, you that's just looking at them, only becoming aware of them, even if you don't intentionally choose to change any of them. But even if you just sat with the awareness of that in a new place, there's no way that you wouldn't just naturally arrive at a new belief about yourself, a new belief about the past relationship, or a new belief about your future that moves you in the direction that you want to go, even if you don't know where you're headed, which I think is
Yes.
like really awesome.
100%. There is something so magical, and it's hard to describe until people go and do it for themselves, about getting out of your bubble, getting out of the neighborhood, the town, the state that you're in, going and experiencing a new place with new people, whether you know them or not, um, wandering a street by yourself and allowing you to really just be with yourself. When I went on my Eat Pray FML trip, like I didn't even know who I was. I can't remember the last time, I couldn't remember the last time that I had just sat with myself and didn't have either a phone in my hand or a TV on or someone next to me. Like I was never really alone. So to go and do something like that for a month and allow myself to be in the discomfort and find the strength that came up after the discomfort left and really discover that I loved being alone and I felt like a badass. And now being able to pass that on and facilitate that for other women, it has, it's just been so inspiring to see other people. And these are like, some of my girls that come are like, have solo traveled and done all the things. And some of them have never been on a plane before and like have been raising kids for the last 20 plus years. And they're like, I want to see the world and I have no one to go with me. And like, so here I am. And it, the perspectives that you come back with, like you will forever be changed. It's just why people love travel so much because you get to meet yourself in new scenarios every day and be open to meeting new people and creating new experiences, and it's one of the best gifts you can give yourself, I think.
So good. I love that. I want to end, if you were open to it, I would love to know what comeback season do you feel like you're currently in? Like, what comeback are you working on? And then what either season or step or phase are you currently in? I know we touched a little bit about it on it, but if you could like define it a little bit more, I would love to hear.
Yeah. We did. I mentioned how I've been feeling like I'm in this waiting room with the different doors. And I still don't know what's behind number four. I know one, two, and three, like the different projects that I'm working on and like have been, trying to manifest, but also let go and like, the whole thing. But I definitely feel like any mother can relate to this, that there is a period of your life when your kid is young where you're like, who even am I? And that's like a lot for me to say because I worked all through my pregnancy. I was doing my podcast. I was like, you know, my 10-month-old came on the first FML group trip that I did, which you can tell that I booked when I was pregnant because it was fucking psychotic and almost killed me. Um, but it's not like I didn't have stuff going on of my own in my own career. Inevitably you still are like, okay, but who am I now that I have this little person that's completely dependent on me? And when my hormones are all out of whack and like when there's so much change going on. So I feel like I'm starting to finally step out of that kind of haze of the first couple years of motherhood, and I feel more balanced and like myself again. I'm also able to now look back on the times where I was like, oh, I wish that like this project would start and go because like I really want to be doing this. But like I would have missed so much of my kids' little baby years that I'm so now thankful I got to be a part of. Um, so it's been this weird like what's coming next, and this lesson of you don't always need to know what it is. um, I can tell you that in the last couple days, I've been having what feels like intense anxiety, but I have realized is like intense excitement of like whatever it is that's coming, even though I don't know what that might be. Um, so I feel like that if I had to like label this comeback, it really is about my ability to let go of control and not need to know what's coming next because my comebacks before have always been planned to some degree. I mean, even when I was getting on the plane to Europe, when the ex that broke my heart was like, how are you feeling? And I was like I'm about to go on a journey of eat, pray, fuck my life. And that's the title of the book I'm going to write. Like I knew. And so I always had somewhat of a action plan and I just don't right now. And there's a lot of fear in that, but also a lot of lessons in that. So I'm kind of just like gonna free fall and wait to see where I'm supposed to go next.
So good. Girl, I resonate with so much of everything that you're saying. I feel like my hormones, I'm like, when do I start feeling like myself again? Like, and I keep calling myself postpartum, but I'm so far from like what feels like far from postpartum. And I'm like, this is a wild ride. Wild
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would say to specifically someone who's going through heartbreak, right? Someone who's trying to like really grieving, getting over their ex, grieving the life that they thought they once would have, like they thought they were going to have. Any words of wisdom that you'd want to leave them with today?
I'm sure I said the same thing on the last episode that I did with you, but it bears repeating, so I'm going
Yeah.
to say it again. However dark it seems in your world right now, and there is like no light in sight, I promise you, the light at the end of the tunnel is magical. You just have to put one foot in front of the other and keep going. It will be worth it, even though you cannot see the how to or the end result right now. I cannot tell you how devastated I was when that breakup took place in my life, and I would do it 10 times over to be where I am at now with all of that what it brought in and the life that it has given me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. I appreciate you coming on. Can you tell everyone where they can find you, where they can maybe hop on one of your retreats, share how they can find you, where they can find you, all of the things?
Yes, totally. So I am on Instagram at Gabrielle Stone and TikTok at Gabrielle_Stone. The books are all exclusively on Amazon. The first is Eat, Pray, FML. The second is The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. And the third, which is its kind of like own entity, it's not necessarily a third that you have to wait to read in order, is called Finding You Through Finding Me. And that's co-written with my husband. That is really about how to heal the things you've been through individually to be able to attract and have a really good, strong, healthy relationship in your life. They're also all available signed on my website, which is eatprayfml.com. I don't do my podcast anymore, but all of the hundreds of episodes are still up and they're, you can binge them at your leisure. And that's called FML Talk. And then if you want to come on one of the retreats, the best way, they're not really retreats, they're trips. Like we have like blasts. It's not like we're like, sitting in meditation the whole time. Like we're doing like awesome itinerary things and like just bonding and having fun. But you can DM me on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to get one of the links sent to you. In 2027, we are going to Australia, Peru, Albania, Bosnia, and Switzerland. So if any of those spark your fancy, just shoot me a message, be like, hey, I want the link for this trip. And they're first come, first serve. And I promise it is the best money you will spend next year.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I know my listeners are so grateful for your time as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.